the architect, and the face. I'm sitting in a quiet coffee shop across the street from the building that used to be my life, watching the movers carry out mahogany desks and Herman Miller chairs. People walking by probably see a woman enjoying a latte, maybe a bit tired around the eyes, but otherwise normal. They have no idea that I just systematically dismantled a $10 million company in less than 72 hours. They have no idea that the man screaming into his phone on the sidewalk, the one looking disheveled and frantic, is my husband. Well, my soon-to-be ex-husband. And he isn't screaming about the divorce. He is screaming because he just realized that for the last 12 years, he was living in a house of cards, and I was the one holding the glue. To understand why I destroyed him, you have to understand what we built. Or rather, what I built and what he took credit for. My name is Elena, and for a decade I was the invisible engine behind Apex Logistics. Mark, my husband, was the CEO. He was the face. He was 6'2" with a smile that could disarm a hostile board of directors and a handshake that made people feel like they were the only person in the room. He loved the spotlight, he loved the dinners, the magazine covers, the Entrepreneur of the Year awards. I didn't mind. I am an introvert. I prefer spreadsheets to cocktail parties. I prefer the quiet logic of numbers to the chaotic noise of networking. When we met, Mark was a struggling sales rep for a failing paper company, and I was a junior analyst at a hedge fund. We were young, hungry, and in love. I saw potential in him that he didn't even see in himself. He had the drive, but he lacked the direction. I had the capital and the strategy. My grandfather had left me a significant trust fund, money that was tied up in real estate and bonds. I never touched it for luxury items. I wanted to build something, so on our second anniversary, I made Mark a proposition. We would start a logistics company. I had written a proprietary algorithm for supply chain optimization in my spare time. Code that could predict shipping delays before they happened. It was brilliant, if I do say so myself. Mark would sell it, I would run it. We operated out of our garage for the first 2 years. I remember nights where we ate instant ramen because every cent went into servers and marketing. I remember Mark crying in my arms when we lost our first big client and me holding him, telling him it was just a numbers game, that we would bounce back. And we did. We bounced back so hard, we broke the ceiling. By year 5, we were generating 7 figures. By year 10, 8 figures. We moved into a stunning glass building downtown. Mark got his corner office with the view of the skyline. I took a smaller office near the server room. I liked being close to the heartbeat of the company. The dynamic worked. Or so I thought. Mark handled the public, the clients, the interviews. I handled the finances, the legal compliance, the HR issues, and the technology. I made sure the taxes were paid. I made sure the contracts were watertight. I made sure Mark looked like a genius. But success changes people. It didn't change me. I still drove my 4-year-old SUV and shopped at Target. But Mark started buying custom Italian suits. He leased a Porsche. He started talking about his company and his legacy. In interviews, he stopped mentioning my wife and co-founder and started saying, "When I built this." I let it slide. I told myself it was just branding. The CEO needs to look strong. The market responds to a singular visionary. I didn't need the ego boost. I knew the truth. I knew that every time he swiped the corporate card, I was the one approving the expense. I knew that without my algorithm, Apex Logistics was just a trucking company with a fancy logo. The cracks started appearing about 8 months ago. It began with the hiring of Jessica. Jessica was 23 years old, fresh out of a state university with a degree in communications and a resume that was mostly white space. Mark hired her as the Director of Client Relations, a title that didn't exist until she walked through the door. I remember looking at her paperwork. She had no experience in logistics. She had no experience in sales. But Mark insisted she had energy. He said we needed fresh blood to connect with the younger generation of startup founders. I tried to be welcoming. I really did. I invited her to lunch to explain our software. She spent the entire time checking her phone and nodding vaguely. She called me Mrs. Davis in a tone that made me feel like I was her grandmother, even though I'm only 34. Then came the late nights. Mark suddenly had endless strategy dinners with the client relations team. But when I checked the calendars, the team wasn't invited. Just Mark and Jessica. "It's mentorship, Elle," Mark told me one night when he came home at 1:09 a.m., smelling of expensive bourbon and a perfume that wasn't mine. "She's raw talent. I need to mold her. You know how hard it is to find good people these days." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. We had built a life together. We were trying for a baby. The idea that he would throw away 12 years of marriage and a multi-million-dollar empire for a girl who didn't know the difference between gross and net profit seemed impossible. Mark was a businessman. That would be a bad investment. But the numbers don't lie. That is the thing about being the CFO of your own life. You see the data points before you see the reality. I started noticing irregularities in the discretionary fund. A charge for a spa day in the city on a Tuesday. Mark hates spas. A receipt for a diamond tennis bracelet from Tiffany's. My birthday wasn't for another 6 months. When I asked him about the bracelet, he didn't even blink. "Oh, that? Client gift, the CEO of Techstream's wife. We need to sweeten the deal for the renewal." It was a lie. Techstream's CEO is a woman, and she is single. I didn't confront him immediately. That is the mistake most people make. They get emotional. They scream. They throw vases. They give the other person time to hide the assets and delete the messages. I didn't do that. I went quiet. I went into what I call audit mode. For 3 weeks, I played the role of the dutiful, oblivious wife. I cooked dinner. I asked him how his day was. I listened to him complain about how hard he was working. Meanwhile, I was cloning his phone. I was downloading the GPS history from his Porsche. I was cross-referencing every single expense report Jessica submitted with Mark's calendar. The picture that emerged was cliché, really. It was almost insulting how unoriginal they were. The business trips to Miami were weekend getaways at the Four Seasons. The client dinners were romantic dates at the most expensive steakhouses in the city. And the worst part? He was using company funds for all of it. He was stealing from us to cheat on me. But the breaking point wasn't the affair. I could have perhaps handled the affair with counseling or a quiet separation. The breaking point was the discovery I made on a Thursday afternoon in late October. I was going through the digital files on Mark's laptop, which he carelessly left logged in at home, when I found a folder named Project Phoenix. I opened it, expecting a new marketing campaign. Instead, I found legal drafts, divorce papers, but not just divorce papers. These were aggressive, vicious. Mark had been consulting with a shark of a lawyer for 2 months. The plan outlined in the emails was terrifying. He was planning to blindside me. He was going to argue that I was merely an administrative assistant, that I had no hand in the intellectual property, and that my mental instability, a complete fabrication, made me unfit to run the company. He was planning to fire me. He was going to serve me divorce papers and a termination letter on the same day. He wanted to kick me out of the company I built, buy me out for pennies on the dollar using a valuation he had manipulated, and install Jessica in my office. I sat there in our living room, the cold glow of the laptop screen illuminating the tears running down my face. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My chest was tight. The betrayal was absolute. He wasn't just breaking my heart, he was trying to erase my existence. He wanted to take my money, my creation, and my dignity, and hand it to a 23-year-old who laughed at my shoes. I closed the laptop. I wiped my face. And then a cold, hard calm settled over me. It was the same feeling I got when I was solving a complex crisis at work. The emotions turned off. The logic turned on. Mark thought he was playing chess. He thought he was 3 moves ahead. But he forgot one crucial thing. He forgot who set up the board. He forgot who owned the table. He was the CEO, yes, but he never paid attention to the details. He never read the fine print of the contracts I drew up 10 years ago. He was so busy looking in the mirror that he forgot to look at the paperwork. I went to my home office and opened a physical safe hidden behind a row of books. Inside was a red binder. I call it the Doomsday Protocol. I never thought I would have to use it against my husband. It was originally designed to protect us from hostile takeovers or bankruptcy. But as I flipped through the documents, I realized it was the perfect weapon. You see, Mark made 3 fatal errors in his arrogance. Number 1, the building. Mark loved our office. He loved the location. He loved the prestige. But Apex Logistics didn't own the building. I did. I bought it with my separate trust fund money before we were married. The company had a lease. A lease that, I realized with a grim smile, had expired 2 months ago. We had been operating on a month-to-month basis because I hadn't gotten around to renewing it. Number 2, the code, the algorithm, the secret sauce that made our company worth millions. Mark told everyone he invented it, but the patent was in my name. It was filed before the company was incorporated. I had licensed it to Apex Logistics. And that license agreement had a clause that stated the licensor, me, could revoke the usage rights immediately if the company engaged in unethical conduct, or if there was a change in executive leadership that threatened the integrity of the product. Number 3, the loans. When we expanded 5 years ago, we took out a massive line of credit to buy a fleet of trucks. The bank required a personal guarantee. Mark, in his ego, wanted to be the big man. He insisted on signing the personal guarantee himself to show his confidence in the business. I didn't sign it, just him. I looked at the documents spread out on my desk. I had the power to evict him. I had the power to shut down the software that ran the business. And I had the power to leave him personally liable for $4 million in debt. He wanted to fire me on Friday. Fine. But today was Wednesday, and I decided to strike first. The trap is sprung Thursday morning. I woke up before him. I made coffee. I even ironed his shirt. I wanted everything to feel normal. I needed him to walk into that office, feeling like a king. "Thanks, babe," he said, kissing me on the cheek as he grabbed his travel mug. He checked his reflection in the hallway mirror, adjusting his tie. "Big day today. I might be late tonight. Meeting with the investors." "I know," I said softly. "It's going to be a day to remember." He didn't catch the double meaning. He just winked and walked out the door. I watched his Porsche pull out of the driveway, and then I picked up my phone. "Execute it," I said to my lawyer. I didn't go to the office that morning. Instead, I went to a spa. I turned off my phone. I got a massage. I sat in the sauna. I needed to be calm for what was coming. Around 11 West a.m., I turned my phone back on. It immediately buzzed with 37 missed calls, 20 from Mark, 10 from Jessica, 7 from our COO, Dave. I smiled and ordered a green tea. Here is what was happening across town, as reconstructed later by the security footage and the panicked texts from my loyal employees. At 10 a.m., a process server walked into the lobby of Apex Logistics. He bypassed the receptionist and walked straight into the glass-walled conference room where Mark was holding a meeting with the senior staff and, of course, Jessica. The server handed Mark a thick envelope. "Mark Davis?" "Yes? What is this?" "You are being served with an immediate eviction notice. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises. The owner of the building is terminating your month-to-month tenancy, effective immediately." Mark laughed. He actually laughed. "This is a mistake. My wife owns the building. Get out of here." "The owner, Elena Davis, signed the order this morning, sir. You are trespassing as of tomorrow morning." The room went silent. Jessica looked confused. "Mark, what is he talking about?" Before Mark could answer, the lights in the conference room flickered. Then the monitors on the wall went black. Suddenly, shouts came from the open office floor. "The system is down!" someone yelled. "I can't access the dispatch route. The dashboard is gone. It says license revoked." Mark ran out of the conference room. "What do you mean revoked? Reboot the servers." "We can't, Mark," the IT director shouted. "The source code has been pulled remotely. The master key has been deactivated by the patent holder." Mark froze. He stood there in the middle of the chaos, his phone in his hand, realizing that his world was crumbling. He tried to call me, straight to voicemail. That was when the email hit the inboxes of every employee, investor, and board member. I had scheduled it to send at 10:15 a.m. Subject: resignation and notice of IP withdrawal. Dear board and team, effective immediately, I am resigning from my position as CFO of Apex Logistics. Furthermore, due to gross mismanagement of company funds and breach of ethical conduct by the CEO, Mark Davis, I am exercising my right to revoke the licensing agreement for the Apex Prime algorithm, which I own solely. An independent audit has revealed that significant company resources have been diverted for personal use by the CEO to fund non-business activities with a subordinate employee. Evidence has been forwarded to the board. I wish the company luck in developing a new operating system. Sincerely, Elena Davis owner, 4500 Commerce BLVD patent holder, U.S. patent G.8 Nans Onjaun. The office erupted. People were reading the email on their phones, looking from their screens to Mark and then to Jessica. The realization rippled through the room. The strategy meetings, the business trips, the stolen money. Jessica turned pale. She grabbed her purse and tried to slink away towards the elevator, but Mark grabbed her arm. "Where are you going? We need to fix this." "Let go of me, Mark," she hissed, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You said you owned everything. You said she was just a glorified secretary. You're broke." She shook him off and ran for the elevator. I finally drove to the office around 1 p.m. I parked my SUV right in front of the entrance. I walked in wearing jeans and a t-shirt. The silence that fell over the office was heavy. Mark was in his office, frantically throwing papers into a box. He looked up when I walked in. His face was red, sweating, veins bulging in his neck. "Are you insane?" he screamed. "You're burning it down. You're burning our money. Why would you do this?" I stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame. "It's not our money anymore, Mark. It's my money, and it's your debt." "I'll sue you," he roared. "I'll take you for everything." "With what lawyer?" I asked calmly. "I froze our joint personal accounts this morning pending the divorce investigation. You can't access the savings. And the company accounts? The bank just froze those too because without the software, the company has no value, which triggers a default clause in your loan." Mark slumped into his chair. The fight drained out of him. He looked small. "Elena," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Please, we can talk about this. I made a mistake. It meant nothing. Jessica meant nothing." "I know she meant nothing," I said. "That's what makes it so pathetic. You threw away a kingdom for a distraction." I walked over to his desk, picked up the picture frame that held a photo of us from our honeymoon in Italy. I looked at it for a moment, then dropped it into the trash can. "You have until 5 p.m. to get your personal effects out of my building," I said. "Security will escort you out." I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I could hear him sobbing behind me, but I felt nothing. The man I loved had died months ago. This was just a stranger who owed me money. The ashes and the phoenix. The eviction was swift. I didn't stay to watch the security guards escort Mark out of the building, but my former assistant, Sarah, who I immediately rehired for my new venture, sent me the video. It was pathetic. Mark, holding a cardboard box overflowing with awards he hadn't really earned, trying to maintain his dignity, while the receptionist he had ignored for years held the door open for him. He tried to get into his Porsche, but the repo man was already there hooking it up to a tow truck. The leasing company for the car had caught wind of the default notice I sent to the bank. It turns out when your credit score drops 200 points in a day because of a called loan, luxury car leases get pulled very quickly. Mark ended up taking an Uber to a Motel 6 on the outskirts of town. The next 3 months were a blur of lawyers, depositions, and forensic accounting. Mark tried to fight, of course. He found a lawyer who was willing to work on a contingency basis, promising him that they could prove spousal coercion or that I had sabotaged corporate assets. It was a laughable strategy. In the deposition, my lawyer, a shark named Rebecca, who specializes in high net worth divorces, destroyed him. "Mr. Davis," she asked, adjusting her glasses, "did you or did you not sign a document in 2018 acknowledging that the intellectual property known as Apex Prime was the sole property of Elena Davis and was being licensed to the company on a revocable basis?" I didn't read it closely. I trusted my wife," Mark stammered. He looked terrible. He had lost weight, his tan was gone, and he was wearing a suit that was clearly off the rack. "So you, the CEO of a $10 million company, signed legal contracts without reading them?" Rebecca asked. "That doesn't sound like coercion, Mr. Davis. That sounds like incompetence." The judge actually stifled a laugh. the divorce was finalized 4 months later because of the infidelity clause in our prenuptial agreement, another document Mark hadn't bothered to read closely. He got nothing. No alimony, no claim to my trust fund, no claim to the building. But the real nail in the coffin was the business debt. Since I had revoked the software license and evicted the company, Apex Logistics couldn't fulfill its contracts. Major clients like Amazon and Walmart canceled their deals immediately. The company revenue hit zero overnight. The bank called in the $4 million loan. Since the company had no assets to seize, they went after the personal guarantor, Mark. He filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy last week. He lost the condo he had bought secretly, hoping to move Jessica in. He lost his watch collection. He is currently working as a shift manager at a car rental agency near the airport. It's ironic, really. He is still in logistics, just on a much, much smaller scale. As for Jessica, that part is short and sweet. She didn't stick around for the downfall. 2 days after the eviction, when she realized Mark's credit cards were declined, she blocked his number. I heard from a mutual friend that she is now dating a semi-retired real estate developer in Florida. She is someone else's problem now. But this story isn't about them. It's about me. For a few weeks, I felt guilty. Did I go too far? Was it too cruel to destroy a man's life so completely? Then I remembered the folder on his laptop. I remembered that he was planning to do the exact same thing to me, only he was going to do it based on lies, whereas I did it based on contracts and truth. He wanted to steal my life. I just took it back. I didn't let the talent go to waste, though. I reached out to the core team of Apex Logistics, the developers, the honest sales reps, the support staff who actually did the work. I told them I was starting something new. We launched Veritas Supply Chain last month. We are operating out of the same building. Since I own it, the rent is very reasonable. We are using an updated, even faster version of my algorithm. And the best part? There is no face of the company. We are an employee-owned cooperative. Everyone has a stake. Everyone reads the contracts. I am not the CFO anymore. I am just Elena. I work hard. I go home to my quiet house, and I sleep soundly at night. Yesterday, I ran into Mark at the grocery store. It was the first time I had seen him since the court date. He was buying frozen dinners. He saw me, and for a second, I saw the old Mark, the charm, the smile trying to form. He took a step toward me, maybe to apologize, maybe to ask for a loan. I didn't stop. I didn't scowl. I just looked through him. Like he was a ghost, like he was a data point that had been deleted from the spreadsheet. I turned my cart down the wine aisle and kept walking. So to anyone listening to this, especially the women who are the silent engines behind their partner's success, check the paperwork, put your name on the deed, protect your intellectual property. Love is beautiful and marriage is a partnership, but never ever let someone else hold the keys to your entire existence. Because the only thing worse than a broken heart is being broke and brokenhearted. And trust me, revenge is a dish best served with a side of financial solvency. My name is Elena, and I didn't just survive my divorce. I profited from it.